Hello everyone, my name is Rebecca and welcome back to... Okay, I gotta take this thing off, it doesn't feel right. Today we're switching things up just a touch. You know that normally I tend to focus on symbols or characters for these topic discussion videos. Today I'm going to be talking about a location instead. Of course, it's the first one that everyone thinks of when they think of Sherlock Holmes, 221B Baker Street. It isn't actually that much of a change. 221B is kind of a symbol itself. It's a physical manifestation of Sherlock and John's life together. And I think the really amazing thing about this symbol is that instinctively, you kind of already knew that. Maybe you hadn't thought about how it was accomplished, but you don't have to read too many Johnlock fics until you stumble across one that has Sherlock or John saying that 221B is the place where they feel safe, the place they associate with the other. That's because the writers have actually written it that way. And today I'll be talking about how that's been done. First though, I want to talk a bit about the set design of Baker Street, because this is one of the few places the writers can show their genuine love of details before the kiss happens. I mean, look at their enthusiasm here.
There are how many steps we're about to go up?
There are 17 steps to Baker Street. They are uncarpeted though and generally filthy.
Yes.
I sometimes worry about Mrs. Hudson's housekeeping.
Yeah, it's not as good as it might be.
But it's important to say, there's a brilliant line in the original stories that although Sherlock Holmes had a certain quiet primness of dress, which we've also gone for, he was nevertheless one of the untidiest men who ever drove a fellow lodger to distraction. And it's set. We wanted from the start to be a very cosy environment, but absolutely as cluttered as as you've always imagined it. That there are the murder weapons turning up in the butter dish and all that sort of thing, or whatever you want.
But it's a hard balance, though, isn't it? Because you don't want it to be squalor. You don't want to sort of go, ugh. You want to think, oh, I want to go and sit here. The other thing we said at the very, very beginning was it should be instantly recognisable, despite the period change, to a Sherlock Holmes aficionado as this can only be 221B. And that's a mix of subtleties and very obvious things, like we should point out this. Is it in the Musgrave ritual? You hear about this, that he keeps his unanswered correspondence jackknifed to the mantelpiece. So there it is, it's done.
We could have easily really updated it to be, an ultra-modern flat. But apart from the fact that would have just not had the requisite sort of coziness, it wouldn't be right.
There's an element of Sherlock Holmes which is men behaving badly solving crimes.
Yeah.
Back to bed. You'll be fine in the morning. Just sleep.
Of course I'll be fine. I am fine. I'm absolutely fine.
Yes, you're great. Now, I'll be next door if you need me.
Why would I need you?
No reason at all.
I believe this is relevant.
This is new to this season. We didn't have it last. There is a Sherlock Holmes keeps his tobacco in the toe end of a Persian slipper, and in Baskerville he keeps his emergency cigarette supply in here. So
The violin.
The violin.
The dread secret of the violin is it's currently strung with cotton, so that when Benedict plays it, because Benedict finds it very hard to play the violin and try to be the wise old Sherlock Holmes.
There's a certain point in every Sherlock Holmes actor's life when they know they have to do this.
It's a bit silly to think that joy would only apply to props when you can find similar details and references pointing to the love story woven into the very core of the narrative. Mark and Stephen both love adapting Holmes. If there's a romance present in the story, it's intentional, the same way all those small details on the set are. I also want to talk about some small, specific set design details you might have missed. One such detail is the 2 doors to the bathroom. There's only one bathroom in 221B, and one of the doors is in Sherlock's room. That's fine, right? Yeah, except the one in Sherlock's room is made of entirely transparent glass. Between these 2 pictures, you can see what the hallway door looks like, and the fact that you can see that hallway door right through Sherlock's glass door. So Sherlock can just see right in there. And in the scene from the picture on the left, Sherlock was getting dressed in the room, presumably while John was getting ready to take a shower.
Higgins?
So they could both see each other. And once you start thinking about how that probably wasn't the only time that happened, and how they had to make furtive little glances at each other while they thought the other wasn't looking, but that they couldn't touch because there was an invisible barrier between them, it kind of just starts messing you up. So I'm gonna move on. Next on the list is this red lamp in the corner, which is turned on most of the time, and that most people seem to agree symbolizes Sherlock and John's passion for each other. Red is the color of passion. Also, you know, a red light is symbolic of, yeah, not like a stoplight, like a red light district, sex. Okay. There's a series of meta totally dedicated to analyzing the lamp written by Queen of Starkness that I highly recommend you check out. I'm bringing it up now because in the next episode on His Last Vow, you'll notice that in a particular scene, the light the red lamp casts will be totally overshadowing Mary's face, which shouldn't be possible if the lamp is still against the wall, so they moved it specifically to create this effect.
You're abnormally attracted to dangerous situations and people, so is it truly such a surprise that the woman you fall in love with conforms to that pattern?
I wonder what they could be telling us. Then there's John's bedroom, which we have never seen and I believe will never see. Despite never seeing John's room, we've had 8 scenes on the show of either John sleeping or waking up, leaving aside the blind banker where he fell asleep at his desk and the time in the jail cell for just now. Every time John has slept, he has either been having a nightmare, woken up sore,
Morning.
Oh, morning.
See? Told you should have gone with a lilac.
No, it's fine. I slept fine. It's very kind of you.
stayed wide awake thinking of Sherlock, or had a wet dream about Sherlock sleeping next to his wife.
Seen a lot of injuries then. Violent deaths.
Enough for a lifetime.
Want to see some more?
Oh, God, yes.
The game is on.
The only time he slept peacefully laying down was when he was sleeping next to Sherlock.
Crime. Something like that.
It's almost like they're building up to something here. And going back to the cell, there was only one bed. And John was uncomfortable because Sherlock was sleeping in it alone.
Oh my God.
Greg, is that Greg? Get up, I'm gonna put you two in a taxi. Managed to square things with the desk sergeant.
So I think, despite John's initial statement that of course they need 2 bedrooms, we'll never be seeing his, because in the end, they'll only be needing 1. I'd also like to take this chance to address the idea that 221B is under surveillance, which was initially put forth in M Theory. While this can seem far-fetched at first, we were explicitly told in the first episode that Sherlock and John are being watched.
Interesting, that soldier fellow. It could be the making of my brother. Or make him worse than ever. Either way, we'd better upgrade their surveillance status. Grade 3, active.
Sorry, sir. Whose status?
Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson.
Okay, but Mycroft is one thing. Thinking that Moriarty can see them in Baker Street is another. But this, too, we have proof for. I mentioned in the episode on The Great Game that there's a scene where the countdown is explicitly shown in the lead-in to the scene and then is knocked down a few hours within that same scene, because Moriarty is penalizing Sherlock for getting distracted and looking into his past.
Carl Powers, killed 20 years ago. The bomber knew him, admitted that he knew him. The bomber's iPhone was in stationery from the Czech Republic. First hostage from Cornwall, the second from London, the third from Yorkshire, judging by her accent. What's he doing? Working his way around the world, showing off?
You're enjoying this, aren't you? Joining the dots. 3 hours. Boom. Boom.
But how could Moriarty possibly know what Sherlock is doing unless he can see him? But he'd have to be able to break into Baker Street to be able to do that, right? Is there proof he can do that? Yes.
Mrs. Hudson!
You had a look, didn't you, Sherlock, when you first came to see about your flat?
The door's been opened recently.
No, can't be. That's the only key.
Several months later, Moriarty posted a video to John's blog, where he again broke into Baker Street and this time filmed his trip.
Who lives in a house like this? It's only me. A skull. I wonder what your skull would look like on my wall. More skulls, more skulls. Alas, poor Sherlock. I knew him well. Time to go, time to go.
So here, Moriarty breaking into Baker Street is associated with cameras. And then in the Reichenbach Fall, we see that there are cameras in Baker Street.
Isn't it great to be working with a celebrity?
Those weren't put there by the assassins. The assassins all think the computer code is inside Baker Street, so if one of them managed to get in there without being shot by the others, they would have torn up the place looking for the code. Besides, the same distorted tape effect is later used for both of Moriarty's videos.
Accompanied by force and done tracing.
Hello. Are you ready for the story?
Smith brings it inside. This looks good. Designer comes in for a shot. Missed it.
Oi, stop with the telly. Something wrong with the telly, mate. Give it a whack, Nick. Who's that?
Did you miss me?
And then there's the evidence of Sherlock's bust in Magnuson's Mind Palace being placed in front of a microphone, and how Magnuson doesn't want to use the bathroom if it's the same as the rest of the flat, aka bugged.
Bathroom?
Along from the kitchen, sir.
Is it like the rest of the flat?
Sir?
The bathroom?
Yes, sir.
Maybe not then.
I mean, Moriarty has been set up as a very creepy stalker. If it turned out he had cameras in Sherlock's bathroom, I wouldn't be surprised, is all I'm saying. He's disgusting. I feel like the combined evidence of the Great Game, that blog post, and the Reichenbach Fall is the most solid though. So all those times you think they're just seconds away from kissing and could have finally done it, maybe they couldn't have after all. Moving on down to the staircase, we have one of the most important parts of Baker Street, probably second only to the chairs in my opinion. First, before I explain what this location means in terms of John and Sherlock's relationship, I want to clarify why I've referred to these as the sex stairs a couple of times. So let me pull out a reference for this. Which copy? Wait, let's go this one. This book is called How to Read Literature Like a Professor by Thomas Foster, and if you haven't read it, I cannot recommend it highly enough. Like, it honestly changed my life. I thought analyzing fiction for deeper meaning was totally pointless before I read this book. No. Really. Anyway, about halfway through this book, there's a chapter called It's All About Sex, which explains a lot of common sexual imagery found within literature. A lot of the most common can be traced back to Freud. While the guy was a total creep and not taken seriously by psychologists anymore, he was extremely influential on pop culture and on widely used symbolism, sexual symbolism in particular. So according to Freud, stairs symbolize sex. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe the climbing up to something? I don't know, but if you research it at all, you'll find that stairs are still pretty commonly used as a symbol for sex. So that's why they're the sex stairs, even leaving aside the postcoital giggling and the spooning. As we move on to the symbolism of their relationship, every time we get a scene in the staircase, you'll want to remember that it's acting as a bridge between the safety of Baker Street and the outside world. It's a sort of in-between space, which is why so many revealing things almost happen there. At those points, they're almost ready to share their relationship with the world. There's a meta by Still Goes Sherlock called 221B as a Johnlock Mirror, which is very good and I recommend checking out, and I'll be referencing for this portion of the video. So how has 221B been set up as a physical manifestation of John and Sherlock's relationship? Well, for starters, it's the reason they meet. They both need a new place to live, a new way of life.
I don't know. Get a flat share or something?
Come on. Who'd want me for a flatmate?
What? You're the second person to say that to me today.
Who's the first?
How do you feel about the violin?
Sorry, what?
I play the violin when I'm thinking. Sometimes I don't talk for days on. And would that bother you? Potential flatmates should know the worst about each other.
Oh, you told him about me?
Not a word.
Then who said anything about flatmates?
I did. Told Mike this morning that I must be a difficult man to find a flatmate for. And now here he is, just after lunch with an old friend, clearly just home from military service in Afghanistan. Wasn't a difficult leap.
How did you know about Afghanistan?
Got my eye on a nice little place in central London. Together we ought to be able to afford it.
The only way they can live there is together. At the end of this meeting scene, Sherlock introduces himself, their new home, and the prospect of a romance to John all in one sentence.
The name's Sherlock Holmes and the address is 221B Baker Street.
Still Goes Sherlock talked about how both John and Sherlock really liking the place the first time they see it is symbolic of love at first sight.
Well, this could be very nice. Very nice indeed.
Yes. Yes, I think so. My thoughts precisely.
Sherlock is bringing a lot of baggage into their new relationship, but he's going to do his best to accommodate John all the same.
So I went straight ahead and moved in.
Rubbish cleaned out. Oh. So this is
well,
all,
obviously I can straighten things up a bit.
And I mean, there is something a little bit romantic about moving in with someone you just met. At least everyone else seems to think so.
There's another bedroom upstairs if you've been needing 2 bedrooms.
I barely know him. I met him yesterday.
And since yesterday you've moved in with him and now you're solving crimes together. Might we expect a happy announcement by the end of the week?
After Sherlock and John's first breathless chase through London, they come back to Baker Street and giggle in the stairwell.
Got your breath back?
Ready when you are.
That was ridiculous. That was the most ridiculous thing I've ever done.
And you invaded Afghanistan.
And Sherlock announces that he's sure that John will move in with him, for good reason.
Mrs. Hudson, Dr. Watson will take the room upstairs.
Says who?
Says the man at the door.
Sherlock texted me. He said you forgot this.
But the police are already inside rifling through Sherlock's things.
Sherlock, what have you done?
Mrs. Hudson.
Upstairs.
And I didn't break into your flat. Well, what do you call this then? It's a drugs bust.
This violation of privacy causes Sherlock to lash out and say something intended to intimidate the police officers so they don't suspect how vulnerable he really is.
Never mind that, we found the case. According to someone, the murderer has the case, and we found it in the hands of our favourite psychopath.
Not a psychopath, Anderson. I'm a high-functioning sociopath. Do your research.
No one else is really at home in Baker Street either. I mean, there isn't even room for Sarah to sit and eat in the next episode. She's really out of place.
We need to find a hideout. A rendezvous. Somewhere in this message it must tell us.
Well, I think perhaps I should leave you to it.
No,
Yes, it would be
you
better
don't
to
have
study
go.
if you
You
left
can
now.
Stay. He's kidding. Please stay if you'd like.
Is it just me, or is anyone else starving?
Oh, God.
Blimey, that was quick. I'll just pop down.
Do you want me to lay the table?
Eat off trays?
Yeah.
Maybe that's why we never see her come by again. And of course, in the next episode, to get Sherlock's attention, Moriarty sets up an explosion across the street, blasting out 221B's windows and leaving them exposed. He also breaks into 221C, at the very least. The windows are still blown out for the scene where Mycroft brings Sherlock a case, making Mycroft's actions in this scene very suspicious, to say the least. The scene is presented in such a way so that John is worried that Sherlock is in danger from the explosion. When John gets inside and sees that Mycroft is there, John assumes that Sherlock is safe from the bomber, but should he really? The windows are still blown out later in the episode too, when Sherlock is deceiving John to make him go away so he can meet with Moriarty on his own to keep John safe. They aren't fully safe in 221B. Moriarty isn't the only one to break into Baker Street, though. In a scandal in Belgravia, both the CIA and Irene do as well.
Hush now. It's okay. I'm only returning your code.
Irene does it twice. Both times she goes straight to Sherlock's bedroom.
The shop?
We have a client.
What, in your bedroom?
She even sleeps in his bed, again an intrusion. The fact that 221B is constantly broken into in this episode relates to Sherlock's fear that he isn't safe to start a relationship with John. They aren't secure. Sherlock has also started turning off the doorbell, not wanting to let anyone in.
Sherlock, this man was at the door. Is the bell still not working? He shot it.
Maybe that's why they leave Baker Street altogether in the next episode. In the Reichenbach Fall, though, we get blatantly introduced to the idea that John and Sherlock feel like their life in Baker Street is private, and that they feel pressure to put on a face for everyone else. When John learns about the press's suspicions about their relationship, he says they need to be more careful, a phrase that implies that there's something to hide.
Confirmed bachelor, John wants.
So death frisbee?
Okay, this is too much. We need to be more careful.
Later in the episode, they head down the stairs, and pausing just before the door, John makes sure Sherlock is ready to face the world.
Run to, all on that day, will I run to the rock? Please pack me a run to the rock.
But again, 221B isn't actually secure. Moriarty breaks in again. And in this episode, Baker Street is literally surrounded by deadly assassins.
4 top international assassins relocate to within spitting distance of 221B.
And we get visual confirmation that they're being watched. Mrs. Hudson's reaction here plants the idea that the cameras are there to record something indecent.
Cameras. We're being watched.
What? Cameras? Here? I'm in my nightie.
Later in the episode, the police break in and further violate the security of Baker Street.
Don't barge in like that. Have you got a warrant? Have you? Leave it, John.
Sherlock Holmes, I'm arresting you on suspicion of abduction and kidnapping.
He's not resisting. No, it's not all right.
John is defensive of the intrusion, to say the least. And if one of them is leaving Baker Street, then they both are.
What are you looking at?
You all right, sir?
Joining me? Yeah. Apparently it's against the law to chill the chief superintendent.
Which, of course, is what happens at the end of the episode. Without Sherlock, the normally warm colors of Baker Street fade away, and everything looks cold and empty to John's eyes. It's no wonder he can't go back.
Would you?
I can't go back to the flat again, not at the moment.
And he stays away for 2 whole years. It isn't until the day he's proposing to someone else that he goes back to Baker Street to say goodbye to the life he had with Sherlock and the hopes he had for their future. We can see in the lingering glances at the staircase in Sherlock's chair that John is heartbroken being here again.
That was the most ridiculous thing I've ever done. You invaded Afghanistan.
Couldn't face letting it out.
But he wants to move on. Sherlock, meanwhile, is back in London and keeps talking about how he needs to get back to Baker Street. He eventually reveals why he's so eager to go there. He thinks John is still there waiting for him. He's shocked to learn that John has moved out.
I think I'll surprise John. He'll be delighted.
You think so?
Drop into Baker Street, who knows, jump out of a cake.
Baker Street? He isn't there anymore. Why would he be? It's been 2 years. He's got on with his life.
We don't see Sherlock alone in Baker Street either. He's always with someone. His brother, Mrs. Hudson, Molly, his parents.
Boring. Your move.
Sherlock? Talk to John.
Would you like to solve crimes?
He's always losing things down the back of the sofa, aren't you, dear?
Afraid so.
Because Sherlock is not meant to be in 221B alone. It's made clear multiple times that Sherlock is genuinely missing John.
John.
Sorry, you're busy.
No. They were just leaving.
We do get one glimpse of Sherlock alone in Baker Street, and he's alone with his fries in the dark. Despite telling Mary that he has no plans to see Sherlock again, immediately after he's done with work, John heads back to Baker Street alone. The scene before this makes it unclear of whether or not he told Mary he was going. Looking handsomer than ever, he pauses outside Baker Street. But before he can go inside and resume their life together, he's kidnapped. This scene is much more poignant if you think Moriarty is behind it, considering everything Moriarty stands for within the show. More on that in a future episode. At the end of the episode, Sherlock and John head out to meet the press again, and at the bottom of the stairs, almost talk about their feelings.
I asked you for one more miracle. I asked you to stop being dead.
I heard you.
But Sherlock quickly turns away and says he needs to be Sherlock Holmes. And being Sherlock Holmes is not whatever this conversation is. There's a mask he has to preserve.
Anyway, time to go and be Sherlock Holmes.
We see Sherlock alone in Baker Street in The Sign of 3, and when he's left alone, it's painfully obvious how much he misses having John living there with him. There's even imagery later on of a missing man being left in John's chair. We're explicitly told in this episode that hesitating outside Baker Street is symbolic of a love affair, which not only adds weight to the scene of John hesitating outside Baker Street in the previous episode, but also every time Sherlock and John have been in the stairway.
She's a client, she's boring, I've seen those symptoms before. Oscillation on the pavement always means there's a love affair.
The most intimate moments of the stag night happen in Baker Street.
And I can't even remember what for. Crime. Something or other. I don't mind.
Am I?
And of course, we get an allusion to the things that happen in Baker Street when they think no one can see them.
Don't worry, Mary, I have been tutoring you.
You did, you know? Baker Street, behind closed curtains. Mrs. Hudson came in one time. Don't know how those rumors started.
They're dancing around it. In his last vow, the symbolism of Baker Street is at its most potent because it's totally unsettled in this episode. And that happens because Sherlock is pretending to have a girlfriend. He moves John's chair.
Hey, what happened to my chair?
It's blocking my view to the kitchen.
Well, it's good to be missed.
Yeah, you were gone, I saw an opportunity.
So you saw the kitchen?
And Janine has rearranged the kitchen.
Oh, could you be a love and put some coffee on?
Sure, right, yeah.
Thanks. Oh, how's Mary? How's married life?
She's fine. We're both fine.
Oh, it's over there now.
Also notice the wallpaper. In a past scene, it looked really blue. Here, though, it's vibrant green.
Oh, John, hi. How are you?
Janine?
Somebody jealous? Magnuson violates Baker Street the same way he does with everything else.
A nation of herbivores.
Later on, when Sherlock is pulling himself back to life for John, he imagines running his hand along 221B's wallpaper. He's fighting for the chance to live with him again. Extremely tellingly, when Sherlock puts back John's chair, his first assumption is that Sherlock thinks he's going to be moving back in.
Mrs. Hudson, why does Sherlock think that I'll be moving back in here?
Oh, yes, he's put your chair back again, isn't he? That's nice.
And to do that, he'd have to leave Mary, because their life together can't exist when John is in a relationship with someone else. If all roads really lead back to Baker Street, then Mary has to go. And in this episode, it's revealed that Mary's only place in Baker Street is as a prospective client. And we all know how that's going to turn out. Also, this phrasing...
Not in this flat, not in this room, right here, right now. What is she?
Okay. Your way. Always your way. Sit.
Why?
Because that's where they sit. The people who come in here with their stories. The clients. That's all you are now, Mary. You're a client. This is where you sit and talk. And this is where we sit and listen. Then we decide if we want you or not.
We decide if we want you? Wow! In The Abominable Bride, we see a lot of the way that Sherlock thinks about Baker Street. For example, the first intruder in this episode to 221B is the Abominable Bride herself.
But in all our many adventures together, no case pushed my friend to such mental and physical extremes as that of the Abominable Bride.
Later, Moriarty arrives, and Sherlock says he knows Moriarty has been to his home multiple times, and even been on his bed.
I like your rooms. They smell so manly.
I'm sure you acquainted yourself with them before now.
Well, you are always away on your little adventures for the Strand. Tell me, does the illustrator travel with you? Do you have to pose during your deductions?
I'm aware of all 6 occasions you have visited these apartments during my absence.
I know you are. By the way, you have a surprisingly comfortable bed.
So maybe it's not that Moriarty is hiding the fact that he's been in 221B altogether, and, you know, him wanting Sherlock to know that he'd been there seems like a thing he would do. But I think if Sherlock knew about the cameras, he'd get rid of them. Sherlock can't help but remember in his dream that John left him.
Hey, Watson, I'm ready. Your hat and boots. We have an important appointment.
Didn't Dr. Watson move out a few months ago?
He did, didn't he? Who have I been talking to all this time?
Well, speaking on behalf of the impossibly imbecilic Scotland Yard, that chair is definitely empty.
It is, isn't it?
But he imagines that John is just as lonely without him. And when Sherlock wakes up, his first order of business is getting back to Baker Street.
You should probably just OD'd. You should be in hospital.
No time. I have to go to Baker Street now. Reality's back.
Then there's this final scene of Victorian Holmes and Watson safe in Baker Street. This is kind of spoilers for my Sherlock fanzine article, but take note that as Holmes imagines the world changing to his imagined future, his appearance doesn't change, nor does the interior of Baker Street, but it's the world outside that must change. Some things in this adaptation are staying the way they have been since the very start.
But then I've always known I was a man out of his time.
As I alluded to earlier on, in an interview on Series 4, Gatiss said that whatever else we do, wherever else we go, all roads lead back to Baker Street, and it always feels like coming home. So when John eventually does make his way back to Baker Street, he and Sherlock will both be home for good. Thank you to both Still Go Sherlocked and Queen of Starkness, whose metas I referenced. You can find both of those linked below. The same goes for the interviews and blog posts that I referenced, and a few things that have been around for a while but I haven't mentioned in videos. You might have noticed on some videos that there are subtitles and translations available. That's all thanks to viewers who have taken their time to add subtitles and translate videos. I want to thank everyone who has taken the time to do that and let everyone else know that that option is there on every video. I greatly appreciate anyone who's willing to help, and I know a lot of your fellow viewers do as well. I also thought I'd let you know that I have actually had a Patreon account set up for a few months. You don't have to donate by any means. I'm definitely not doing this for the money. But if you want to think about it like a tip jar, I really appreciate whatever you want to give me. But like I said, it's not necessary. I'm just letting you know that it's there. And again, thank you to everyone who has already become a patron. I really appreciate it. So with all of that out of the way, next time you can expect an analysis of His Last Vow, which is going to be painful for me in particular, but hopefully also for you, because then I'll feel better. Until then, thank you for watching, and get ready to believe.